Hello nice humans, I'm here with a Junk Journal January video, and I'm actually hosting this particular prompt with Meg today as part of the collaboration that she's built around this project for January. It is such a joy to be part of it. My prompt is intricate, and I just think, when I think intricate, I think collage. I love doing carefully created, very detailed pieces, so I thought I would do that with you today. So these are the things that I use for it. I've got matte gel medium, which I use as my adhesive. It leaves minimal residue and it is perfect for the process. I have a craft knife. It's a very sharp one. It's one that is easy for me to hold and is comfortable to use. And I have put a fresh blade in it because I'm working in very fine detail for this intricate piece, so I'm going to put a fresh blade in. In fact, I'll probably replace my blade a couple of times while I work. I have some tweezers for manipulating my teeny tiny pieces of paper, and then I have this little metal stick which I use for getting glue onto small surfaces or into tricky little corners, and you can use anything for that, but this is what I happen to have. And then I've got a cutting mat, obviously, to protect my work surface. So that's what I'm using for this. The other thing that I have are these folders full of paper that I have painted. This is a style of collage that I do a fair bit, so I have these on hand and I always make more than I need, so I have plenty to draw from. For this particular project, I didn't actually have to make any fresh ones because I had all the colours that I wanted already. And sometimes I sit down and make a bunch of them just when I feel like being creative, but I can't think of anything to do, like I just want to play with paint. Making some of these is great. And I just use found paper for these, and I use brown paper. I often use the bags that I get from delivery, like meal delivery people, like Uber Eats or whatever. That's the perfect paper for me because it's not too thin and it's not too thick. But anytime I see brown paper, whether it's a paper bag or whatever, I grab it and I use it for this. So you can see me selecting some papers here for what I want to use. I've decided that for this one, I want to create an anatomical heart because I have a song lyric stuck in my head. The artist is Billy Bragg, and he's somebody I've been into since I was like a teenager, which for some of us is longer ago than others. I turned 40 in 2022, so my teenage years are sort of fading into the mists of time. But my love of Billy Bragg has remained. And yeah, the song's called Upfield, and the line is, "I've got a socialism of the heart." And so I thought an anatomical heart with those lyrics would make an interesting little artwork for my journal. So you can see here that I have actually drawn a pencil line on this. I often don't do that. I'll often go just freehand, but this piece has got a few sections that I want to fit in around each other. So I'm just going a little bit carefully and making sure they're sort of reasonably consistent in size. Not to be anatomically perfect, like this piece is definitely not that, but just so that I can be sure that they fit in with each other. Those of you who are familiar with the shape of a heart will know that I've actually made the top part of that one far too big, but that's so that I have somewhere to adhere the other bits. So when you're making a piece like this, you need to think about how you're actually going to stick the pieces together. And I usually assemble them before I stick them to a background, or at least partially assemble them before I stick them to a background. So I need them to be able to stick to each other. So I've left a fair bit of space at the top there to stick these other pieces onto, and then if any of that's visible, I'll cut it out afterwards. Hopefully that makes sense. Oh, that's my chair squeaking, sorry. So I am just carefully drawing these main pieces onto these painted pieces of paper, and I'm going to cut them out using my craft knife. You can use scissors, but I prefer a craft knife. I get a lot more precision, and I actually just enjoy the process more as well. Like it's just more fun for me this way. So yeah, I'm just going with my nice sharp blade and getting in there and making these shapes that I want to make. I have obviously sped this up substantially. This process is I mean, it's intricate, it takes time. I often like to do flowers this way as well. Like I'm often drawn to insects, flowers, like things with a lot of fine detail in them. And it does take time, and it's what some people would consider fiddly. So it's not for everybody. But for me, this is a really great way of getting into that creative flow state. I really enjoy it. It's relaxing for me, and the process is the point. Like, if the product is beautiful, then I'm happy. But even if it's not, I get something out of this process. And being absorbed in it it's really good for me. It's actually really great for my mental health, because getting into that flow state is a great way of getting out of an anxiety state, or some of the more negative headspaces you can be in. This is a great antidote for that, for me. And that's not the same for everybody. Obviously, there are some people who would find this like really frustrating, and it would actually create anxiety. So I'm not suggesting it's for everyone, but for those of us who have a brain that like mine, then it's really great. So yeah, this is one of my go-tos, and I love it. So yeah, I'm just continuing to adhere these pieces to each other. Sometimes I'm actually trimming little bits off after I've added them in, when I can see that something needs adjustment. So it's a process. I'm working from an illustration that is just out of an anatomy book, I think, but I found it on Pinterest. So I'm just going from that. I have it like up on my iPad next to me so I can refer to it when I want to, but I'm not trying to make this perfect, because the purpose of it is to be representative, right? I don't need anyone to use this as, a study tool for their anatomy class. It's just to represent the idea for this particular artwork. So you can see I'm just kind of trying to fit these bits in together with each other, make sure they work. I'll often put a little bit of glue on one small section first, and then make sure it's exactly in the right spot. Like when I'm using a wet glue, it gives me a little bit of a chance to adjust it if I need to, and then I can add more glue and sort of adhere it more fully once I'm sure it's in the right spot, and also that I don't need to fit any more pieces underneath it, like, or tuck them in any way. So yeah, that's, again, the gluing is also a process. It all comes together slowly and in bits, and again, that's part of the fun. You can see here, this is why I use matte medium instead of something like PVA, because when I get it on the front of the piece, if it was PVA, even when it dries clear, you can see a glossy residue, whereas matte medium dries pretty much invisibly unless you put lots on there. So that gives me room to make a mess if I need to. I'm just showing you a little bit of a closer look at this one, because I'm cutting out tiny little bits from the edge of this piece, just to create a tiny uneven sort of scalloped edge, which is what it looked like in the picture. So again, this is a very intricate process, and it's quite fun to sort of work with that little blade and try and get the right shape. You can see that I'm sort of cutting away from myself here. I do that as much as I can, and that often is the easiest way to do it as well. But obviously, when you're working with a blade like this, it's important to be careful of your fingers. I have cut myself before, and if it's sharp, which it should be to get nice clean edges, it's sharp enough to cut you as well. So just go carefully. I know you don't need me to tell you that, but I don't know. I don't want you guys to hurt yourselves, so be careful. I'm cutting out some little veins here for the heart, which I want to be quite thin, obviously, because they're skinny little things. So I'm going carefully with that too, and I'm definitely cutting more than I need so that I can select the ones that have the right width and shape, because it is actually quite hard to get that exactly right. So I just cut a whole bunch and then try and fit them together based on what I have. I didn't show you that whole process because it was quite repetitive, but you'll see how they fit together once I show you the finished piece. This is me creating a banner, because if you remember from earlier in the video, I was saying that this is actually inspired by a song lyric. So I actually want to put that lyric on here with the heart. So I'm doing a banner. I'm making it a bit wonky and messy because I kind of like that look. And I'm using some sort of tan and brown colours because it will look a bit like kind of like paper or parchment or whatever. So this is me trying to fit those together. I have a tricky time with the sort of twirly bits of on the ends of these banners, but we get there in the end. I end up putting them onto scrap paper and then tracing the shapes because I couldn't make them fit in just by eye. So I drew it and then cut the pieces out and then used those as a template. And you know, that's a fine thing to do if you need to as well. Whatever gets you the shape that you want is good. So now I'm thinking about how I want to fit it onto the page and how the pieces are going to work together. You can see that I have cut out the text from my banner now as well. So I cut it out of the front pieces, and now I've cut a piece, well, I'm currently cutting a piece of darker brown to stick to the back, which will help that text really stand out and create a little bit of dimension. I'm having to go in with my little gluing stick, not to be confused with a glue stick, and putting glue just in any of the little bits that might lift. I know I don't need to tuck anything into this one, so I'm sticking it down quite carefully. And I've saved the center of the O and the A and the R, you know, any of those letters, and I'm sticking those back in. That's possibly the most fiddly thing on this whole piece, and you can just leave them if you prefer that look. It's not necessary, but I quite like it with those pieces added back in, so I'm doing that too. And before I stick it down, I'm thinking about any layering that I want to do, and I've decided that I want to stick this one to a piece of vellum tracing paper, you know, this kind of opaque, semi-opaque paper. So I am putting it onto that first before I actually stick it into my journal. And this is me adding it onto that. I want it to really stand out, like it's quite a bold piece with some bright colours and all of that kind of thing. So I want it to, I kind of want to lean into that, I guess. So yeah, I'm just making sure these pieces are getting stuck down carefully because this is kind of the last stage of the process, right? We're not having to worry too much anymore about what has to fit in, apart from one last bit, which we'll see in a second. So I'm just putting these little curly bits in, getting confused, redoing some bits, I think, and making sure that everything fits. I think that one you saw me doing just then was slightly the wrong colour, so I just cut a second piece. So I want to connect the top and the bottom so that they look like they're made of one piece of ribbon or fabric or whatever the text is written on. And I really need to make sure it is exactly the right shape and on the right angle. So I got some tracing paper and I laid it over the top and drew where I wanted it to go so I could get that exact. And then I am going in with a pencil and just going over it so that I've got quite thick lines, or not, I guess quite dark lines more than anything. And then what I'm going to do is put them, I'm double checking again that I've got it right, because I don't want this to look too wonky. In the end, I'm actually not super happy about how this piece looks, like this bit at the back, which is a little bit annoying, but the process still stands. This is what I do when I'm wanting to add something in and I need it to be exactly right. So I have put it onto this piece of tracing paper. I'm going over the lines to darken them with a pencil. And if you use a reasonably soft pencil like HB or softer, then that's better. And then I'm putting it upside down onto the back of the piece that I want to cut it out of. And I'm going over it with a pencil, but you could use like anything, like the end of a texter or anything you can press down hard on, and that's transferring the original pencil lines to the back of the piece that I'm going to cut it out of, and then I'm cutting it out. And that means that they are actually not transferred in mirror image. They're going to be the right orientation, and I can cut them out and add them in. I hope that makes sense. So and to finish off, I wanted to add just some text, like some vintage book paper on there, and I'm using matte medium, and I'm being careful to just apply a thin but even layer so that it sticks nicely to the page in my journal without buckling. and then I'm adding adhesive just to the parts of the what's the word I'm looking for? I've said it 5 times already. The vellum that are covered by the actual illustration, because otherwise you would be able to see the glue through it and it would look a little bit messy. So I just put that on there and stuck it in, and now I'm adding a tiny bit of journaling, which is the last thing I think for this page. So I just wanted to write a little bit about why the song was stuck in my head. Because I don't know, it's interesting to reflect on the way that songs, especially songs that you have loved for a long time, whether the effect that they have on you, I guess. And this is one. Billy Bragg affected the development of my politics and my kind of worldview quite a lot as a young person. Although now that I look back, I'm not sure if I was drawn to him because I already had those values and he found a way of voicing them, or if he actually influenced me in that direction. And I'm sure it was a bit of both, but it's kind of interesting to reflect on that kind of stuff, because the media that we engage with, whether it's TV or, the news or films or, novels, poetry, whatever, we do sort of incorporate them into ourselves, and they are part of what shapes us, along with the rest of our lives, relationships and, all that stuff. So I don't know, it's just interesting to think about it. And I'm glad there is a bit of a socialist troubadour like Billy Bragg that I can kind of connect with, and that I could connect with as a young person and feel kind of seen and validated and, be inspired by. So I guess I was sort of thinking about that kind of stuff. This is what the page looks like, and I hope you like it. I really enjoyed making it, and I'm pleased overall with how it turned out. I hope you're having the best time with Junk Journal January. It's a great prompt list, and the artists who are contributing to this collaboration are just blowing my mind already, and I'm so excited to see what's still to come. Make sure you like and subscribe here if you're so inclined, and also continue to check out everybody else who's involved, and I'll see you again really soon. Bye.